Hello and welcome to the Face of Pro-Life. Today I'm speaking with Father Angelo Geiger from the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate. Thank you so much for joining us today, Father. I've actually been dying to speak to you since January when the Obama administration passed the HHS mandate requiring Catholic organizations to basically pay for abortions, birth control pills, sterilization, morning after pills, all of the things that we've been taught that we shouldn't be involved with. So could you give us the background of what this means to the Catholic Church and what the bishops are doing to address this?
Well, a basic teaching on the issue of religious liberty is that there should always be freedom from coercion, not simply in matters of what religion you choose or the ability to practice your religion as far as going to church and worshiping. You hear people starting to make the distinction between religious liberty and freedom of worship, and that saying that the Constitution only really covers freedom of worship. What we believe is that that it's our God-given right to act according to our conscience, and that nobody should be forced to act against their conscience ever. And that's at the root of the argument now. It's been at the root of of many of the things that we've been fighting for, and the things that we've discussed here for years on Face of Pro-Life, in particular same-sex marriage, for example, the right of parents, for example, to see to it that their children are educated according to their own faith, which is now, manifestly being violated in states where same-sex marriage is been implemented.
Right, in the public schools.
In the public schools, it's being taught in the public schools. So, and this was one of the major things that we felt that people could sort of understand. If they couldn't understand what difference it should make to them why other people get married when it doesn't bother them directly, this was an issue where it would bother you, wouldn't, and this was largely ignored, unfortunately, by people and now they're beginning, maybe some of them are seeing that it is affecting the way their children are being educated and formed. So we're dealing with this issue on a number of levels, but it's basically government interference in the life of the Church, government interference in the rights of religious people to live according to their conscience, freedom free of coercion. That's the bottom line, and that's the reason why the bishops at this point have gotten involved, because in this particular case, with Obama's mandate, this is the most blatant governmental interference in the workings of the Church. Same-sex marriage, sort of the state sort of kept its hands off the Church, although that's not altogether the case, but it's more direct now.
Yeah.
In Catholic institutions. That ultimately will have to cooperate in this evil by paying for it.
So, the argument was that they're not forcing priests and nuns to take birth control because the church itself, because they only hire Catholics and they only administer to Catholics, they're exempt, but the schools, the hospitals, all of the different other Catholic charities, all the different organizations that don't discriminate, that they're Catholic in nature, but they don't only serve Catholics and they don't only hire Catholics, are going to have to be forced to provide all these objectionable things to their workers, whether they want them or not, but and at no cost.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. It's not like birth control is like a huge, expense to begin with. But they're why are they picking this particular issue, this particular to go after the churches?
Well, I think a lot of government intrusion is about control, and You can examine the motives for that, in many ways, but sometimes it's an elitist mentality that people believe that other people need to be guided and controlled. And I think the message of the church is, always remains a controversial and to some extent unpopular one. So the church becomes an easy target. The church remains a firm moral voice when there aren't any firm moral voices, and that's always a thorn in the status quo, in the side of the status quo.
Do you think they underestimated the bishops? Do you think they kind of felt that the bishops have been kind of lax in their standing up against some of the things that the government has done in the past, such as the same-sex marriage and everything? Do you think they were like?
Yeah, because I think sometimes like Catholic institutions like hospitals and universities and things like that have compromised themselves by taking government money and have cooperated in evils, and it's been just more or less overlooked.
Right.
And when people have been upset about it, Catholics have been upset about it, not a lot has been always done about it. There's a lot of complicated issues, but I think, I've blogged about it a little bit, and the thing that I found from people who had objected to the things I said was that you're already doing this already.
Right,
right. And when was the last time you heard a homily about contraception? Now, of course, the issue isn't directly about the moral evil of contraception. It's about religious liberty. But I hope that this will actually maybe inspire people to think more about contraception.
Oh, I think it's a total godsend,
Yeah.
and on more than one thing, more than one ground.
Yeah.
Like you're right. I'm hoping that this is a teachable moment.
It'll provide an opportunity to teach more about the evil of contraception, why the church remains steadfast, why the church, finds itself in this position to defend its moral right to teach against contraception and to be free of coercion to pay for it, and that's the issue, is that the church is given a mandate to preach the gospel by Jesus Christ, and to set people free through the truth. Truth sets us free, and Jesus Christ is the truth, and that's one of the fundamental mandates of Christ to his church, is to teach. And in everything the church does, it's supposed to exemplify the life of Christ and the teaching of Christ. So the church, well, no matter what the church does in this case, it's going to be teaching. It's either going to be teaching the truth or it's going to be teaching an error. No, it's going to be scandal. If we don't stand up for religious liberty, the result is scandal. Right. This is what Bishop Laurie, said in response to an article by America Magazine. This is one of the fundamental issues that's involved here.
Well, I think it kind of started out from scandal to begin with by the bishops ignoring Humana Vitae, which is, my gosh, one of the most beautiful doctrines of the church. I mean, just so beautiful and so prophetic that if that's not pro-woman, I don't know what is.
Sure.
it is so beautiful. And by ignoring that and not teaching that to the faithful, we have come to the point where many Catholic women are contracepting, and to their own detriment.
Yeah. So now the bishops sort of walk this tightrope of entering into the public square on this issue. And it remains to be seen, how successful they are. I absolutely believe they're doing the right thing, and I think the political cost that's involved is more or less irrelevant.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that the bishops need to have moral clout in the public square, and they used to have it. But you could argue that in the past they used more discretion about what they would get into a fight about and what they wouldn't, and then in more recent times, a lot of times they haven't spoken out on on issues which are confessional, that like contraception, but they have spoken out on issues that are more, more generic and non-confessional, like peace and justice and war and
Healthcare.
Healthcare and death penalty and things like that. So now they've come down on an issue which is related to a confessional belief, which is contraception, but the fundamental issue, really, the one that they're defending, is religious liberty,
Right.
and that still remains a more general sort of non-confessional issue, and this is why we're getting support from the Protestants and Jews and people of all persuasion. Because they all recognize they all recognize that the issue really here is freedom of conscience.
Right.
However, because the church is, in respect to life issues, marriage and life issues, is considered socially conservative, then there's this immediate connection with the Republican Party, not explicit or formal,
right?
But it's it's implied, and therefore the cry of not only the Obama administration and people who are secular and sympathetic with the Obama administration, but also Catholics, like from America Magazine and other places, are making that connection. See, and they're
but
saying
it's
that
the Democrats that have attacked the church.
Huh?
But it's the Democrats who have attacked the church.
Yeah.
Their administration, anyways.
Yeah, I think this is a tactic for the most part of the liberal Catholics, who, the Catholics who are liberal on social issues,
right?
Who realize that this is their best defense against the bishop's endeavor at this point, is to accuse them of being partisan, and that's the risk they've taken. But I think it's a necessary risk, and God bless them for taking it.
Were you surprised?
And there will be there's likely to be political cost. This could help. This could work against Obama, or it could work for him.
Right, right. Were you surprised at how united the bishops and vocal the bishops
I don't know
were?
what pushed them over the edge exactly. I sort of wonder, wow. But
it's like hallelujah.
Cardinal Dolan certainly had a lot of influence, and Bishop Laurie has. But they seem to have been fairly united on the issue, and God bless them. And I don't know why exactly, but I'm just happy that they are.
So they have a lawsuit because this goes into effect. The administration says that they have a year to do what they have to do to go against their conscience. Right. I don't know exactly what they expect them to do, but so they've joined the Priests for Life, and I know. EWTN, some of the universities have joined this fight too, so that's going to play out like in the courts, right? I know that one of the bishops, Bishop Jenke, who is out of the Diocese of Peoria in Illinois, he had addressed a group of men, a call to Catholic men of faith, and I have a couple of quotes from his talk. He's really rallying the troops, and he says, "The Church will survive the entrenched corruption and sheer incompetence of our Illinois state government." They've been forced to get out of the adoption business, Catholic Charities, because they didn't want to...
like Massachusetts.
Right.
Yeah.
And even the calculated disdain of the President of the United States, his appointed bureaucrats, and HHS, and the current majority of the federal Senate. May God have mercy on the souls of those politicians who pretend to be Catholic in the Church, but in their public lives, rather like Judas Iscariot, betray Jesus Christ by how they vote and how they willingly cooperate with intrinsic evil. As Christians, we must love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. But as Christians, we must also stand up for what we believe and always be ready to fight for the faith. The days in which we live now require heroic Catholicism, not casual Catholicism. We can no longer be Catholics by accident, but instead be Catholics by conviction. it's like we've been waiting to hear this
Yeah.
for a long time, you know, and it took a lot of guts for him to get up and say this.
Yeah, yeah, because they immediately are the Catholics that are writing for some of these more progressive publications are saying this kind of talk is divisive and and provocative, and it tends to to push people. People want to hear reason and persuasion. They want to know that their bishops are giving, teaching moral lessons, but not interfering in the public square, this type of thing. And it's basically, just telling the bishop to shut up.
Right, right.
And sometimes, you're left in a position where, diplomacy is not the most important
Right.
value at the moment.
Jesus wasn't too diplomatic, was he?
Exactly. Well, he could be, but it depended on who he was talking to.
Right.
And the Obama administration is aggressive and blatant and unrelenting. So you got to play the game,
So what this bishop went on to say is he's basically saying comparing this situation to other situations of communism and socialism where, they try to drive out, not just try to, but have driven out churches, closed Catholic schools, basically, taken church out or religion out of all of the public square. Right. And so he was comparing Obama to Hitler and Stalin and the such. Because he's saying that if we don't do something, by next fall, there will be no Catholic schools, there will be no Catholic hospitals, because we cannot participate in this intrinsic evil.
The bishops, following traditional Catholic moral theology and with the blessing of the Holy Father, have made it very clear that this is formal cooperation in an intrinsic evil, and it just simply can't be done.
Do you think that's the goal? You really think that's the goal, to close all these institutions? The government's trying to do?
Either to close them or to shut the church up, It's basically control, one way or another. We'll allow you to exist on our terms. We'll allow you to function on our terms. But it'll be on our terms that you'll function, and if you don't function on our terms, you won't function at all.
That's kind of
but that's been coming along for a long time,
true.
And now this is just okay. Whatever it was, it worked, and now they've perked up and they're on their toes. But it's been coming on for a long time with abortion,
right.
with same-sex marriage, with adoption, all this stuff.
You mentioned the same-sex marriage. I read an article recently, and I wanted to bring it, and I didn't get a chance to, but there's a ordinance that's being floated, I think in Kansas, where the Catholic Church and all the churches would have to entertain homosexual marriages and weddings and stuff. And we kind of been saying that all along. And this is another intrusion into.
If it come to the point where if a kid decides that a boy decides that he's female, he's a girl, and he wants to go to a Catholic school, that they're gonna have to treat him like we're in a quagmire, and so they have to fight this out. And I think also that there's been, for whatever reason, maybe the culture of the church in the last, 40 years or so, this idea that a lot of these battles could be hashed out politically in back rooms and make deals and compromises, and they haven't worked.
Well, it was interesting because this whole mandate was worked out, and I found it really interesting that.
I would just say, I'm not saying that those things can't be used.
Right.
But you always have to carry you always have to have the stick.
Well,
you can't lay down your stick.
The interesting thing was that when they went to this, they decided, this big hoopla came out. Joe Biden said, probably not a good idea, but the women in HHS said, no, this will float, this will go, we need to do this. When the bishops, first spoke out, he said he was going to get a compromise, but he never even asked a bishop or a cardinal or any of the religious leaders to be involved in this, discussion. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how disrespectful was that?
It's the elitist mentality, it seems to me. That would be my take on it, is the idea that somebody, in the upper echelon of the government can solve this, and the peons down below should just accept it. It's just, it's a very much part of the this. Government has the right to do all this, and the church should just shut up and accept it. It's an ongoing conflict. It's a conflict that the church has always had to deal with, mm-hmm. and it's the reason that the church is very nuanced in its approach to religious liberty and the relationship with the church and state. We have had confessional states in the past, and the church isn't fundamentally opposed to the idea of a Catholic state. It couldn't possibly be, because we've had them, and they're ideal if the conditions are there to allow it. A Catholic king is a wonderful thing if he's really a Catholic king, but it's a complex problem,
right?
And it's never been easy, and even when there were confessional states, there was church-state relation problems, of the state interfering in the church interfering in the state. So it always remains a fundamentally problematic issue.
Right. It's a balancing act, for sure.
It is a balancing act. But now, in the climate in which we live in a pluralistic society, and one which is not a confessional Catholic state, and in a time in which the dignity of the human person is constantly under threat, and in order for the church to maintain her liberty, she has to defend the liberty of everybody else. Right. The church has always been in favor of that, but she sees in this particular moment that that individual liberties, within obvious limits of the natural law, need to be protected, and therefore it remains a fundamentally complex issue. However, in this, when you have an intrinsic evil like contraception, it's not that complicated.
No.
And they really have no choice. They have no choice, and that's hopefully the message they'll get across to most Catholics.
And in the same time teaching them what they should have been teaching them like 30, 40 years ago, which would be really nice.
And hopefully to impress upon people that the Church's position on fundamental moral issues, life issues, issues concerning marriage are not partisan or political, right, or conservative in the sense of Republican, but they just remain the perennial teaching of Jesus Christ and are independent of any kind of political party or movement. And it's just simply the commitment of the Church. It always has been.
So what does the average faithful Catholic do in this situation? I mean, what can we do to support our bishops in this effort?
Well, I would pray. I would also congratulate your bishop and your priest for speaking up on these matters, and encourage them to continue to do so. And I think people should be thankful to have moral leaders who are willing to stand up and say the right thing and do the right thing, and to back it up and to accept the consequences of doing that.
I think you bring up a really important point, because people are so quick to criticize our bishops and priests, when they want to. And I'm sure they're getting criticism for standing up against this.
Sure they are.
So it's really important that we congratulate them and support them and let them know that we, really support what they're doing here, because really this has been a long time coming, and we've been this is something we've been praying for. So thank God for Obama. Because nothing else has woken them up like this HHS mandate has.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really has been a godsend.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you wonder why, some of the things like the emergency contraception here in Connecticut didn't really light the fire the way you'd hope it did. But now you see that there's no negotiating on these issues. There's no working out backroom deals, and it's just
Right.
it's a slippery slope. You compromise your ground, and before you know it, they're taking more of it.
Right. Yeah, they were chiseling away a little bit, but this one they just took a big bite.
Yeah, but they're moving progressively with greater audacity,
right.
Into areas of religious liberty.
Do you really think that they were taken aback? Like, did they really? Do you think they were shocked that the bishops stood so vocal and firm?
Yeah, I think a lot of them think it was a big political mistake, and the bishops are going to pay for it. I think that's what happened. I think that's what they're hoping. See, that's what they're hoping.
How are the bishops going to pay for it?
By losing the fight. That's what, by losing the fight, and they think that what they're really trying to do is to get Obama out of office. That this is just a pretext for their political. A lot of these people that I've encountered imagine that the vast majority of bishops, or a very, very significant portion of them, are very, very conservative Republican.
Where have they been?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
We've been praying for that.
I've pointed out the USSCB voting guide isn't particularly favorable to the Republican.
It's wishy-washy.
So I don't know where you're getting this idea.
I know.
That there's and so they're fighting for a fundamental issue. Whether their job is going to be to make that clear, and to make it clear that they're not being partisan. That's going to be their challenge.
Yeah, and
I don't think they are.
Right.
I'm just saying that's going to be the center of the argument from the opposition.
But except that they do have a lot of support from other organizations that aren't necessarily against contraception itself, but they do understand that this is a religious liberty issue.
Right.
So there's a lot going on, and I'm so glad I got an opportunity to speak to you on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you will talk to your priest. If you get a chance, write your bishop or talk to him and congratulate him for standing up, because all of the bishops have stood firm on this religious liberty issue, and we are so happy to have them in the fight. We want you to talk to your family and friends about the things that you learn here on the Face of Pro-Life, and when you look in the mirror the next time, you realize yours too is the Face of Pro-Life. Join us again next time.